Kesara, and today I'm going to be doing a review for To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. I did receive a free arc of this book from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. To Sleep in a Sea of Stars is an adult sci-fi novel that is of the space opera variety. It's following a main character named Kira, who is on a scouting mission when she falls through this alien structure. And it's the first real sign of other intelligent life forms that humans have found, even though this book is set in the very distant future from our current Earth. It kind of starts a war. I really enjoyed a lot of aspects of this book. It is definitely very character focused, following our main character Kira the entire time, and it has some really subtle, interesting character moments and just sort of world building things, but it's also super action packed, especially the second half of this book. Like the last, I want to say 1/3 of this book is just all action, and I loved every second of it. As always with my reviews, I'm going to talk about 4 things: character, plot, world building, and writing style. So we're going to start with character. So our main character is Kira, but there is this whole cast of side characters, which I absolutely love also. So they are part of the space crew, and you really get to know all of the individual characters on the crew. And then there's also the ship mind, who is amazing. I absolutely love the ship mind. It's part of the world building idea where people, after their bodies have been completely destroyed or close to being destroyed, they can choose to take a spaceship as their body. Their brain becomes the computing processor for the ship, and it's fantastic. I absolutely love the way that is done, and the personality of the ship mind is fantastic. I love the idea of it. I love the character, and the execution of it was just perfect. I absolutely loved every second of that. It's kind of like how in a lot of sci-fis there's this artificial intelligence that is a computer that runs the ship, except it's not an artificial intelligence. It's actually a human being that used to have a body that is now a ship, which is just really cool, and I love the idea of it, even if I can't imagine ever doing that myself, if you know what I mean. Also, one thing I really liked about the way the characterization was done, there were things that happened and there were consequences to those things that happened that the characters really had to overcome and grow and learn and build from, which I love that aspect of it. Kira especially has a lot of things that happen to her, and she has to grow into it and accept all of these things that happen to her, and she has a lot of choices to make, and just the way that she goes about that is really well done, and I really like that aspect of it. Who she is at the very beginning of the novel is so completely different than who she becomes at the end of the novel. I wish I can go into more detail because it is really interesting where she ends up, but I don't want to go into spoilers in this, but I absolutely love her arc and a lot of the things that she goes through. It is so well done. Next, I'm going to be talking about plot, and plot was a little hit or miss for me because I do think the very beginning was very interesting. The setup and all of that was very intriguing, and then I feel there's a good portion of this novel that got a little boring. Mind you, this is an 880 page novel, so it's almost 900 pages. It's a 30-something hour audiobook, because I did listen to the audiobook of this. It took me a while to get into it. It took me, I want to say, about 60% of the book before I was just oh yeah, this is great, if you know what I mean. So after a while, I did really enjoy it, and I feel now that I know where the characters are going to end up and that I'm invested in those characters, that there's so much action, especially towards the end, I feel rereading the book, I'll like the plot a lot more because I'll get to spend more time with those characters after already knowing that I like them. But just getting to know the characters, it was really slow at the beginning, really slow, but it is so worth it. The action-packed side of this book, which is very heavily towards the end of the book, is really good. And even though I'm saying there's so much action at the end, pacing didn't feel off or anything. The pacing felt fine all the way through it, but there is just so much that needs to be done at the end that it needs all of that action, and there's a lot of character growth and development through that action as well, but it's so good. The space battles, there are space battles, and it's fantastic. There is in space where people are fighting in space, there are missiles, there are nukes, there's just everything. There are aliens, there are multiple types of aliens, there are good aliens, there are bad aliens, there are aliens that are allies, there are good aliens that are enemies, and there's just so much. There's a big bad boss sort of bad alien that they have to get rid of that is just the ultimate powerful thing that's seems completely impossible to get rid of. There's just so many great aspects to the action side of this that I just absolutely loved, and it was just so much fun to read all of those action side of things. Next, I would like to talk about world building. And the world building is a little hit or miss for me, because while some parts of the world building I absolutely love, like the ship mines, like the aliens and stuff like that, I do think it was a little weak when it came to the human side of world building, because there was this kind of like hint at like a bigger political picture and a lot more complexity in like the human side, but we didn't really get any details into that. Like, we heard of like the Earth homeworld, and that's like about it. We heard about the Earth homeworld. It's a thing that existed, but it wasn't really part of the picture. Like, we didn't see what it would be like to live on Earth or anything like that, or even get any sort of idea of what that would be like, or like what other kind of structures or planets exist in this world in which humans are living on. We really just got more of a view of the ship that they were living on, which, I mean, it was fine, but I wanted a little bit more from the world building than I got. I did still really enjoy that aspect of it. I just wanted more from it than I got. And I feel like there's just so much words and details in here that we could have gotten more hints and clues to like the bigger world and the bigger picture of the story. And lastly, we gotta talk about writing style. And I absolutely love the writing style. The author is just so good at eliciting emotions, and not the typical emotions that you would expect from a book, like humor and sadness and anger and all of that. Like, there's just like certain feelings that you wouldn't expect to get from a book. Like the feeling of hugging someone, like you can get that from this book. The feeling of like a hot shower after a long day, like that was one thing that I was just like, oh my gosh, I totally feel that right now. It just felt good. Like, it was such a good feeling that I wasn't expecting from this type of book. And there are like so many scenes in which you just get that feeling from the book, and I absolutely love that aspect of it. I do think though that sort of writing is what made this book a little bit longer than it needed to be. I really do feel like this book was a little too long for the story that it was telling. Maybe it's because I've been reading a lot of sci-fi recently, and most sci-fi books are a lot shorter as opposed to fantasy books, which are generally a lot longer. But I don't know, I expected this book to have more action and more character development, at least of the side characters, because our main character got a lot of character development for the amount of words that were on these pages. It just wasn't quite there, but I still really enjoyed this book, especially, like I said, the last like 1/3 of this book, I could not stop reading. I read that like all in like one sitting. It was so good. I absolutely loved it. And I ended up giving this book 4.25 stars. Thank you guys so much for watching. I post videos on Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so consider subscribing. And if you'd like to be notified as soon as I upload, you can click that little bell icon. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up to support my channel. All social media links are in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.